Hey, this is Ian from Solve Oak Ministries, again here to talk about lifestyle worship. Today we want to touch on tag team leading. Is it effective and does it work? Stay tuned to find out. So, tag team leading. Is it effective? Can it work? Why or why not? Well, these days we see that tag team leading has become really popular. Most church services you go into, you'll see it happening. But is it really effective and does it work? I want to look from two different points of view. The first one being from a worship conference setting where there's really no limitations. Worship is the only focus and there's sort of no structure. The second point of view I want to look at is from a church setting where there is structure and where there is time limits. So let's look at the first one, which is the conference setting. You know, tag team leading in worship conferences at most of the time works quite well. Generally because there is no time limit. And at some stage during the time of worship, if everyone's focused on God and focused on what the Spirit's doing, they generally become one focus, one in mind, one in spirit, and they generally can then catch the wave and ride it on in together. And so it can be quite effective because having that so much time to do so. But what about in a setting of a church? Usually the worship's limited to about 30 minutes, you know. So can tag team leading really work in that kind of environment? Well, you know, everyone has a different opinion on this. Some love the idea because they see people like Hillsong and Bethel and Elevation Worship. They all do this kind of tag team leading set. So some really love the idea. But there are those out there that really dislike the idea. I'm not a big fan, to be honest, of tag team leading because for one reason, as my wife says, when you have tag team leaders, you get what you call fruit salad worship. There's really no main focus. Everyone's on different levels and they all go their own way. And I have to agree strongly with that. But I have led in tag team environments before and you know, mostly in the big worship conference settings. So there is no time limits. So you, like I say before, you know, generally you end up catching the same spirit and you just go forward. Mind you, in a lot of those times, or all of those times, I've been involved in the same band with the same members, same people. We've spent a lot of time practicing. We've spent a lot of time in prayer. We've done it for so many years that we all know each other's heart. We know how each other flows. And so we're usually on the same page from the get-go anyway. And so it tends to work very well. However, I've also experienced this in church settings, and I'd have to say it's one of the most frustrating times for me as a worship leader. I do not like tag team leading because you are limited to the 30-minute bracket. You know, you sort of end up getting fruit salad worship, as my wife puts it. I had an experience going back some time ago. I was asked to lead worship in a church, and this church said to me, it was the first time I was going to be leading in this church, so they said, we would prefer you do tag team leading, so we'll give you X amount of songs. I'll end up being one song, and you know, the other person's going to do 4 songs. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not a real big fan of this, you know, but anyway, I'll do it. And the thing was, you know, we started getting into this song. I started to lead, and I really felt a sense of warfare come out. I really felt we needed to break some atmospheres, break some chains, and really warfare in the spirit. And I began to lead this song and break into warfare. And as we started to enter into a free time of worship, the other leader cut in and brought in this song of intimacy. And it really sort of changed direction. And so as you could imagine, here we are going from a warfare side of things straight into an intimate side of things, and it really wasn't a time for that. And the worship really at that time just really flopped. So again, there was the fruit salad worship. And you know, I find that that's generally what happens in all the churches I've gone to, and there's this tag team leading. Although there's it can have a slight presence of God, and we can have an anointing come to some degree, it doesn't reach its full potential, and I'll tell you why. You see, as individuals, we all see things differently. You know, you could look at one particular point, I could look at the very same thing, and we both get a different outcome. And that's what can happen when you're leading worship. You know, if you're tag team leading, you're in a tag team leading environment, you know, as it happened to me, you could be feeling, oh man, we need to break through, or we need to have a celebration. We need to have this time of celebration. And then this other person's like, well, no, I don't see that. I see we need to come and just lay ourselves down at the cross and have this intimate time of surrender, you know, and it really doesn't have any focus, and it changes the way the flow is, and so you end up not really knowing what to do. It's not as effective as it can. Can God move? Sure, he can move. He still can do stuff. God's gracious with us, but it doesn't have its full potential. You know, the other thing you've got to look at is people are at different spiritual levels, okay? Some people are very good and sensitive at discerning on what's going on in the atmosphere. They have a clearer perception on what's going on. Some others have a better understanding on how to follow the Spirit and be accurate at what they're doing, being led by the Spirit. So if you are leading with somebody that's maybe not as in tune with the things of the Spirit, it can be very frustrating, and it can be very, very pointless. And that might sound bad, but we're there to do a strategic job. We are there. Our purpose is not just to lead people into worship, but our purpose is to speak into the atmosphere, to create atmospheres, to speak into the heavenly realms. You know, and if we've got different focuses going on, well, we're not sort of creating the one focus sort of atmosphere. We can't be effective at doing that. And if you're not effective at creating that atmosphere, well then worship doesn't really take off for even the people down in the congregation. You know, so this is why it's so important. Really, I am a firm believer that there should be one song leader. That way there's one focus, one goal, one destination, and it's more clear and understood. You know, there's like the saying goes, you know, too many chief, not enough Indians. I'll tell you the problem with tag team leading. These are just a few problems, okay? Who do we follow? So what I mean by that is you're in the team environment. Who does your team follow? Who do they answer to when a question arises? If you've got more than one leader, it's like then you've got 2 or 3 people, sometimes 4 people talking back at you, and sometimes they can be all different things, and then that creates confusion. Again, the band need to know exactly what their destination is, what their target point is, and where to head with that. If you've got 4 different opinions coming at you, there's no clarity, then nothing is effective. The second thing is no agreement on arrangements. You know, you could say, well, the intro is going to be this, but then somebody else might say, well, no, I want this, or I feel we should go this way. You know, if there's no agreement on arrangements, on how something should be, then there's nothing more frustrating as being a part of a team that is in that environment. Again, no focus, you can't hit that target that's set before you. It just brings and breeds confusion. What about differences of opinion on an atmosphere? It almost goes hand in hand with the second point. You know, one person might feel, well, I think we need to celebrate here, have a celebration. The other one might say, well, I really feel we need to warfare here. The other one might say, well, I think we just need to be in that place of adoration to God. You know, and then there's all this, here we go, this fruit salad starts to come out. You know, the other main thing that is a big problem when it comes to tag team leading is song selection. You see, I find today song selections aren't really done, or set lists aren't done in a correct way. Most of the time these days, it's usually people just sitting around in a circle and they say, let's do this song because it's a great song. And just because it's a great song doesn't mean that it's going to be for that Sunday service. And yet we have a lot of people that are leaders that think so and think that's the way it works. But see, song selections are so important because I'll tell you now, personally, when I do a set list for a Sunday service, and the reason I like doing it on my own is for this reason, is because I like to spend time in worship with God, and I like to sit there in His presence and say, Lord, what is it you want to say to your people this week? What is the focus point? Are you wanting me to lead the people into battle, in warfare? Are you wanting me to lead the people into just an intimate worship session with you? What is it that you are wanting to speak to your people this week? You see, when you've got tag team leaders and they're all throwing in their song, it's not always going to fit. It's not going to fit the category or the purpose or the goal that God is setting for you. And look, God can work with many people. He does. He has, and He will. But on a bigger scale, on most of the time, if we look at the majority of the time is fruit salad worship when we have tag team leading. That is why I'm not a big fan of it. That is why I don't like doing it. That is why I'm a person that is really against it. And I think if you listen to this teaching on what I'm telling you, I think you'll find the same thing. Look, the reason it works for people like Bethel and for people like Elevation and Hillsong, and I'm not bagging them because I do like Elevation Worship and I do like particularly Bethel, but the reason it works for them is because, you know what, their practices aren't just in and out. They spend hours of time together. Does it always work for them? No, it doesn't. I've seen Bethel shows on TV and online where it sort of just hasn't seemed to flow because it's sort of not got the same focus point. But majority of the time, yeah, it seems to work for them. But you've got to remember, the videos they put out, how many times have they been edited? How many times have they... It's not just been a once-off hit, bang, and they've got it. And most of them that you see on there aren't their church services. They're actually their conferences. So you've just got to remember that. What we see, it's not always what it seems. Okay? So that's the thing you've got to look at. But you know what? I'll leave it in your capable hands, and it's all up to yourself. But I guarantee you one thing: if you apply this to your church, if you apply this to your team, you will see effective worship come forth. One focal point, one focus point, one target, one goal, and you will reach that target because there will be clarity, there will be understanding with your team, and there will be no confusion there. Have a great day and be blessed. This is Lifestyle Worship.